Hello everybody, this is Freddy from We Scale Your Brand, and in this quick case study I want to show you how we scaled this ecom brand from 254k in December all the way up to 372k in January. So I'd say without any further ado, let's hop right into the Ads Manager. So this is the Ads Manager from the last 30 days. I would say let's hop into December first. And as you can see, in December we spent 74k. We had one main scaling campaign. This one was for women, this one was for men, this one was for men as well. This one was for women, this one was for women as well. And this one was for men. Now if we hop into January, you can see only basically 3 campaigns were running because the men campaigns weren't performing at scale, so I eventually turned them off. So I would say for this video, let's just look at these 3 campaigns because they were the ones which spent the majority of the overall budget. If we take a look at December, we can see that we still had the same campaign setup. We didn't nearly spend as much as we did in January on testing. Just a slight bit of money was spent on testing, and we still have just a slight bit of money was spent on testing. This was the testing campaign. We still had our retargeting campaign running, it's still the same, and then we have basically our scaling campaign. So I would say, we can quickly compare those numbers so you can see what's up. So we increased the spend of the scaling campaign by 95% while only dropping 8% in tracked ROAS. Then we tested a lot, 766% more, and because we got a lot of great creatives in this month, and we also did some landing page testing. I will be going over each of the setups in just a minute, and then the retargeting campaign also we spent 168% more here, and while only dropping 7% in tracked ROAS. So I would say let's get rid of the compare feature. Let's just look at January because I will go over the scaling campaign, how we scaled this one up. So first of all, scaling, super simple. If you look at the history, for example, you can see January 22, I just bumped up the budget from 2,600 to 2,900. Then like 4 days later, I bumped it from 2,900 to 3,200, and then 3 days later, I bumped it from 3,200 to 3,600. This is basically how I scale. I just go up by 10 to 20%, wait a few days, see if it's stable, and then continue to scale up. If we look in the ad set, at the ad set structure, you can see it's super easy. 3 ad sets, right? This is a CBO campaign with no minimum budgets per ad set. So basically giving Facebook all the room that they want to kind of optimize or to divide the spend the way that they want it to do. Obviously we have broad, so no targeting at all. We can look in this, also optimize for purchases, and then only exclusions that I have running currently are purchases of 30 days. So just excluded purchases from the last 30 days. If you want to learn more about exclusions and how to use them, I have a video linked somewhere around here. I made a video about that as well. Only targeting women because these are specifically women's creatives. No targeting. Automatic placements, obviously. Then 7-day click 1-day view is the attribution window. For the 1 to 2% lookalike stack, what I've done, it's not really a stack, it's more like 2 lookalikes combined. So we have 1% pixel purchase lookalike, and then 1 to 2% pixel purchase lookalike again. Same exclusions, same gender, same age range, automatic placements, and then 7-day click 1-day view as the attribution window. So how does the ad setup look like? Again, it's super simple. Let's go in this one because it spent over 50% of the overall budget, which is typical. Broad has a large inventory, so Facebook probably will end up spending most here, even though, for example, 1 to 2% lookalike has a higher ROAS. I'm totally fine with that because the audience is way smaller. So if Facebook would spend more here as opposed to here, the ROAS here would drop, and in the end, we would probably have a worse ROAS or a higher CPA. Whatever you want to say. So if we look into the ad structure, super simple. We have one main winning creative which has gotten around 50% of the overall spend, and then we basically have some other winners. They're not as much of a winner, but they take up the rest of the spend. So we essentially had 4 main creatives. One was a new one, which I put in there like last week, which came from testing, which also has the highest ROAS, almost the highest ROAS out of all of them. I will be going over my testing setup in just a minute as well. But basically, 3 creatives running. Whenever I find a new winner, I put it into the scaling campaign and turn off the worst performing creative in my scaling campaign. So if I would find a new winner right now and I would put it in here, I would probably turn off this one. I probably wouldn't because it is the main winner, but I would probably turn off this one or this one because this has only gotten super low spend. I would probably turn off this one, put in the new winner in here, and then see how the CPA is affected over the next couple of days. Again, same setup for 1 to 2% lookalike, same creatives, same ones running, all good on this end. I think what is interesting to most people is basically testing. How do you do testing? And how I do testing is quite simple. I run tests at broad. So whenever I have a new test, whenever I want to test creatives, headlines, or ad copies, I run them at broad. So no targeting. Only gender is women because I'm testing new creatives for women. And I test per creative angle basically. So let's say I have 3 new UGC videos, 3 new static images. I would divide them into 2 ad sets and I would test those 3 static images and then 3 UGC videos. You can even go so far as maybe test 3, concept could basically be everything. So you could test like 3 different UGC videos from the same person versus 3 different UGC videos from another person. That could also be creative concept. All kind of depends on how much budget you have, how deep you want to dive into testing, etc. But essentially, what I did, for example, here, I was testing the 5 to 6% lookalike stack. It ended up being performing quite well in the previous month, also in December. So that's why I ended up putting it into the scaling campaign. And then let's take a look at this one because these were the main creatives that I got. And as you can see, the ROAS is above the ROAS from my scaling campaign. In this instance, or if that is, if that is happening to you, because I use ABO for testing because I want to test each concept on its own. And if your creative testing is performing better than your scaling campaign, that's usually a good sign because that usually means you have a new winning creative. And then what you can do is just bump up the budget here as well. So what I did, for example, went from 250 to 350, from 350 to 450, from 450 to 500, and so on, all the way up to 650, right? It's still stable, it's still performing better than a scaling campaign. So the more money I can spend here, the overall higher my account ROAS is, right? And yeah, just so, because I got this question a lot, can you scale up your creative testing campaigns? And you can definitely do that as long as they are outperforming your scaling campaign. And then usually you'll find that winner and you put it in the end into the scaling campaign, right? In this case, when I test new creatives, I always test them with the same headlines and same ad copies that I use for my previous winning creatives, right? So the only variable that you want to change in a test is the one which you want to test, right? So you don't want to put in new ad copies, new headlines, and new creatives together. You want to kind of separate each variable and then test. So for example, if I would test new headlines, I would put in my top creative with my top headline and top ad copy, and then just test the new creatives. Then if you look at the creative test, I use dynamic creatives for testing, again against broad, and the way I look at ads is obviously using Supermetrics, kind of exporting all of the data, analyzing stuff, but in the end, to keep it super simple, I use the stop right formula, which is basically 3-second video plays divided by impressions. Basically shows how good you are at capturing attention of a user on Facebook. The higher that number, usually the higher the ROAS is. There's not a one-on-one correlation, so just because you have a high stop rate doesn't mean that your ROAS is going to be high. But generally speaking, the higher the stop rate, the better the video average playtime, the better the outbound CTR, and therefore the better the ROAS, right? As you can see here, for example, this one only had a 32% stop rate, but had a significantly higher ROAS than this one, while also having a decent amount of spend, right? So it's not always the case. High stop rate doesn't always equal to higher ROAS, but in most cases it does. So in the end, I ended up took this creative and I put it into what I call proving ground, which is basically a separate ad set in my testing campaign where I just put in the post ID from winners from creative testing, right? So this looks like that. So this was performing great. So what I ended up doing, I took the post ID from the creative that I just showed from the dynamic creative test and put it into the Proving Ground campaign again, which is just called Proving Ground against broad automated placements, same settings as for creative testing, just with post ID. And in this ad set, what I want to do is basically, it's the last step before I decide to put something into the scaling campaign, right? So in this case, I was testing this creative. It spent $3,000, got a super good ROAS, and then I ended up putting it into my scaling campaign, right? And this is basically how I scale. Again, super simplified. One ad set per creative concept, or if I want to test new audiences, what I would do is just launch that new audience in this campaign, for example, here with a 5 to 6% lookalike stack, and then put in my creative winners as the ads, right? Only change one variable at a time, and test per creative concept. And then before I put something into my scaling campaign, I put them in what I call Proving Ground, where I just basically test them abroad with a post ID, because sometimes a dynamic creative works well, but then it doesn't as a post ID. Retargeting, also super simple. Middle of funnel stack, Instagram engagers, Facebook engagers, 95% video viewers, and then all website visitors 60 days, view content 30 days, add to cart 60 days combined together as well. So super broad retargeting audiences, giving me decent ROAS that I'm happy with, and I can scale this up. Again, most of the budget goes to the broader retargeting audience, which totally makes sense. ROAS is lower, which also totally makes sense, because obviously those, for example, especially add to cart 60 days has a higher purchase intent than just Instagram engagers, but you can spend more against Instagram engagers. So if this would get more spend, the ROAS would drop as well, right? Creative setup, I can go with that quickly as well. Not something super spectacular. I have my two winning post IDs. Then I have one basically static video image with a discount code, and again, super simple setup, and it works. Same for middle of funnel retargeting, same ad setup, works wonders. And yeah, this is basically how I scaled this account. Again, having a creative that can, take up much spend. Sometimes you have winners which, can take, I don't know, like 500 per day or 750 per day, but they, if you scale up to 1,000, they end up dying. That's usually because the creative is not good enough at scale. So you need to find creatives that are good at scale. Again, if you go into this, ad set again, this ad got almost 50% of the spend from that ad set, right? So it spent 24K alone on that ad set in the last month. Have a solid testing strategy. Ideally speaking, you would track all of the tests in like a Google Sheet. Google Data Studio is what I use for reporting. And then also do some landing page testing. And if you have a solid product, solid offer, that's how you scale. Super simple again. Just up the budget by 10 to 20% every 84 hours. See if it holds, and then increase it again. And yeah, that's how I scaled this account. I hope that this video was useful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. And yeah.